Hey everybody, this is Will Davis. The purpose of this video is hopefully to change the way you think when you hear the phrase introduced a new typewriter or a new typewriter appeared on the market, or when you read that somebody designed and introduced a new typewriter. We're going to take a look at a couple different machines here and give you some facts, and hopefully from now on, every time you see or hear that, you won't just go right by it. So, we already know, those of you out there that have Wilfred Beeching's excellent book, Century of the Typewriter, either version, Beeching mentions in here several times that there's no better way to lose a fortune than to try to build a typewriter. And that's absolutely the case. And we're talking about, in that respect, we're talking about introducing a completely new machine to the market. So what we're not talking about here, a couple examples, we're not talking about taking a machine that's on the market and then license producing it somewhere else. That is not a new machine. It's a licensed copy. We're also not talking about, when we say, for the purpose of today's discussion, a new typewriter, we're not talking about taking a machine that's on the market and then modifying it to change or improve it. Because that's also not really a new typewriter. It is, but it isn't. Not wholly. We're talking about the process to conceive, sketch, invent, hand model, test, patent model, litigate and patent, hand construct, prototype, field test, production engineer, and that is the development of all the tooling necessary to build the typewriter and all of its parts, further field test, alter, and then advertise, manufacture, ship, and sell typewriters, all of which happens before you've ever made any of the investment back on selling machines. So that whole process I've just described and let's just look at it. This is a standard typewriter, which will become important here in a little while. This typewriter is a little simpler than most standard typewriters, but in the old days, when a standard machine, quote unquote $100 machine, had well over 2,000 parts in it, we're talking about a lot of manufacturing and a significant cash burn period from investment to on the market, where you're just eating money and you're not selling anything. So there's a real interesting fact I read a long time ago about an attempt to introduce a standard typewriter to the market that essentially failed. Now that involves Blickensderfer. I think everybody out there is familiar with Blickensderfer typewriters, and some of you are familiar with this typewriter, the Blick 90. This is the last machine that Blickensderfer, of course in the new name Blick Typewriter Company, actually put on the market. And they actually ended up turning the company over to Lyman R. Roberts, who designed this machine. It became the L.R. Roberts Typewriter Company. He died before L.R. Roberts actually started, and then the company failed. But this machine was the straight replacement for the type wheel machine. Now, prior to this, George Blickensderfer had obtained the rights to build what was called the Moyer typewriter, originally invented by Emmett G. Latta, and that did show up on the market as the Blick Bar. But during the work to produce that typewriter, some of the shareholders became really upset with the amount of money they were burning on that project, and actually some of them made statements to the press as to the value of having that machine, or why would they get away from building the typewriter that had gotten them where they were, the theory being you dance with who brought you. So one magazine at that time, we're talking about 1916-17 time frame, it was a magazine called Efficiency, and that magazine really wasn't about efficiency, it was about the efficient conduct of business. They published a fact that I've never forgotten. They said that in general, in order to get a standard high-grade typewriter, and again, for us, that's at that time a $100 typewriter, competitive with Remington, L.C. Smith, what have you. In order to get a machine like that from concept to market, it took between 6 and 8 years and roughly $1 million. Now think about that in terms of 1916, 1917 money compared to now. That is a long time and a lot of money. And again, that's because all the parts in the typewriter at that time are designed and manufactured locally. You're not outsourcing pretty much anything except the type slugs, possibly the key legends, but everything else you're designing, patenting if it's good enough, and making it yourself. So think about that for any typewriter you see. Now, I will add, larger companies with great resources could beat that. The Monarch not only appeared from conception to production in a little over 4 years, they actually built a factory for it. But Union Typewriter was the biggest typewriter manufacturer in the world. They controlled the biggest makes in the United States. And so they had the money. Again, L.C. Smith and Brothers, about 4 years from the start of design until actually being on the market. It's still a significant period of time and a significant amount of work. Just as a comparative example, I don't happen to have one here. I have them over there. There was a company in about 1974 called Avitronics that got a pocket calculator on the market from start to on the market in just a few months for $600,000. That's because all the technologies in those calculators were on the market. The displays were available. Chips were available. You had to get a case designed to put it in and get somebody to design a circuit board, but all the components to go on the circuit board were available. Some other companies had already burned the cash to develop all that, including the chip. Keyboards were available. LED displays were available. And of course, all the other things were easy. Packing and printing instructions, so forth. Compare that $1 million in 1916-17 money to $600,000, you'll see the complete difference in technology that we today kind of think of and what it takes to produce one of these. So one of the things you might say is, well, I really don't see anything special in this or that machine. I wonder if it took that long. So I just invite you to consider the Fortuna for a moment. So this machine was designed by Carl Schlunz, who had redesigned the Mercedes. The first Mercedes typewriter was a failure. The number 1, those were all recalled. The number 2, designed by Schlunz, was a massive improvement and succeeded on the market. A number of years later, he designs this typewriter, completely new, completely different. And luckily, we were able to find the patent information for this typewriter and figure out what's going on with it. So if we look at advertising for this typewriter, here we have a 1935 brochure for this machine. We'll notice on the back that it points out that it has short type bars. The Fortuna type bars on the left. It points out that the type bars are shorter, they're lighter, they're easier to accelerate, they don't vibrate and return to rest faster. And in fact, this machine was advertised as a Schnell or speed typewriter. That's not the reason behind the engineering, though. So, luckily, we're able to figure out in the patents, Schlunz himself had figured out that type bars in standard front striking typewriters tend to vibrate, or they can vibrate, and they vibrate in 3 directions. Direction of travel. Now, of course, on a hammer and anvil machine, you are counting on flexure of the type bar once you hit the anvil or the shoulder to make contact. So you're counting some flexure, but you don't want to ring like a bell. But machines can vibrate the type bars in that direction. They can also vibrate them side to side, and it's also possible to have torsional vibration, all of which can mar the print quality, blurring the print and making it look like the machine doesn't work right. Schlunz carried out a series of experiments, and he determined eventually that by controlling the material, the mass, the length, and the total angular travel of the type bar, that any of those 3 vibrations can literally be engineered out. And that is the major design principle behind the Fortuna. Now, it does result in a machine with very short type bars. And if you looked at this typewriter, you might be tempted to think that this was some kind of portable typewriter segment and or basket in a standard machine, but that's not the case at all. So now we take what looks like a fairly normal machine and understand that there's some pretty brilliant engineering in there all of which had to occur before any typewriters were sold. So anyway, hopefully from now on, whenever you see or hear somebody mention, write, whatever, that a machine was introduced, brand new machine brought to the market, what have you, you'll think about all the work, all the time and effort that had to go into making that, and it's not a simple proposition by any stretch of the imagination. Hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you again soon.